By the time Eliza Hartwell reached the royal registration table, the seventh beastmaster was hanging from a banner pole. One boot was in a wolf's mouth, and nobody in the observation gallery seemed willing to admit the obvious. The obvious, in Eliza's opinion, was that the wolves were having the best morning of anyone present. 3 moon-blessed cubs prowled the training pit below. The old temple records insisted on cubs, though each one was already the size of a small pony, with paws wide enough to hide a man's boot and teeth built for ruining leather. The largest had sat on the silver restraint chain. The smallest had stolen the command whistle. The third was watching the trapped beastmaster with the expression of a creature considering whether banner poles counted as toys. The beastmaster, who had entered 3 minutes earlier in polished armor and unreasonable confidence, clung to the pole with both arms. "I withdraw my application," he called down. The smallest wolf spat out the whistle, wagged once, and looked disappointed by how quickly humans quit. Eliza leaned toward the registration table. "Do they always interview people by letting the wolves remove parts of them?" The royal steward stared at her. He was a thin man named Oswin, built entirely of nerves and paperwork. "Pardon? The boot," Eliza clarified. "I assume that counts as a partial removal." At the back of the gallery, Alpha King Rowan Blackthorn said nothing. He stood tall and severe, black hair tied at his nape, formal coat fastened to the throat, looking like a man who had broken sieges. Unfortunately, his 3 sacred wolves were currently using a professional beastmaster as furniture. Inside Rowan, his own wolf made a low, thoughtful sound. Rowan ignored it. Elder Rothgar closed his eyes as if asking the ancestors why they had abandoned him to this nonsense. Captain Brennan rubbed both hands over his scarred face, while Oswin quietly crossed another name off the applicant list. Oswin cleared his throat. "That concludes the morning applicants, Your Majesty." The smallest moon wolf dropped the stolen whistle at the base of the platform, then looked up at the trapped beastmaster as if offering a rematch. Elder Rothgar opened his eyes and declared the recruitment a humiliation. Captain Brennan answered that the humiliation had started when Master Bellamy promised to tame the wolves with a flute. Oswin corrected him faintly. The wolves had not eaten the flute. They had buried it under the south viewing bench. Brennan said that felt spiritually identical. Rothgar's mouth tightened. "These are moon-blessed royal war wolves. They are living symbols of Shadowrest power. They are not barn dogs." From beside the registration table, Eliza answered, "That might be part of the problem." Every head turned. Eliza Hartwell stood beside the table with one hand still raised. She wore no armor, beastmaster's sash, or sign of formal training. Her brown dress was mended, her boots still remembered farm mud, and her braid was tied with twine because ribbon had struck her as unnecessary. Oswin stared at her. "Are you lost?" "No," Eliza said. "I came about the wolves." Rothgar made a small sound too cold to be a laugh. Rothgar repeated her purpose as if the words had arrived wearing muddy boots. When he asked whether she was a beastmaster, handler, or soldier, she answered each question with the same calm no. Captain Brennan leaned over the registration ledger. "Profession?" Eliza thought about that for a moment, because the truth was complicated only if people insisted on making it sound important. "Farm girl," she said. The silence that followed was very complete. Below, the 3 moon wolves had stopped tormenting the trapped beastmaster. All 3 were looking up at her. Rowan noticed that. He also noticed that Eliza did not look away from them. Rothgar recovered first. "This recruitment is for a qualified royal beastmaster." The notice said anyone capable of calming the 3 moon-blessed wolves could apply, Eliza said. It also said hazard pay included. Oswin looked down at the parchment. His expression suggested personal betrayal by ink. "It does say that." "It also says survival not guaranteed," Eliza added, which seemed honest. Captain Brennan's scarred mouth twitched. Rowan's wolf, the ancient, inconvenient presence behind his ribs, stirred again. "She smells like hay, apples, dog hair, and terrible decisions." Rowan kept his face still. Eliza stepped closer to the rail. The moonwolves looked back with bright, predatory interest. The smallest still had the beastmaster's boot. The largest had one paw on the restraint chain, as if claiming it by conquest. "How long do they run every day?" Eliza asked. Oswin blinked. "Pardon?" "How long do they run?" Hrothgar's eyebrows drew together. "They are exercised according to royal protocol." "That was not a number." Brennan coughed into one fist. Eliza pointed toward the long-legged wolf chewing the boot heel and asked if they had anything they were allowed to destroy. Oswin repeated the word destroy as if it might explode. Eliza explained that teeth needed honest work. Rope, hides, branch bundles, or straw-stuffed sacks. "They are sacred animals," Hrothgar said, offended. "We do not give them sacks." "So they made their own arrangements," Eliza answered. The smallest wolf chose that moment to shake the boot violently. The trapped beastmaster made a noise of grief from the banner pole. Eliza nodded as if this confirmed a diagnosis. "Do they get brushed?" Oswin looked helplessly at Brennan. Brennan looked at Rowan. Rowan looked down at the wolves. The largest one was now rubbing its shoulder against the stolen chain, apparently enjoying the friction. "The previous handlers considered grooming unsafe," Brennan said. Eliza's tone carried judgment so mild that it somehow became worse. "And do the handlers always go in with chains, poles, whistles, armor, and the emotional scent of a man about to be buried?" For one dangerous second, no one breathed. Then Captain Brennan made a strangled sound and turned it into a cough. Hrothgar's face darkened. "Young woman, those creatures injured 3 trained handlers in 2 weeks. Eliza said she had heard. Hrothgar listed the reinforced leather, the injured handlers, and Master Bellamy's unfortunate journey through a fountain. "Was he holding the flute at the time?" Eliza asked. Oswin, against his better judgment, checked the notes. "Yes. Then he brought music to a wrestling match." Rowan's wolf made a sound disturbingly close to laughter. Rowan did not laugh. Kings did not laugh during royal security failures. Eliza looked from Hrothgar to Brennan, then to Rowan, and gave the respectful dip of someone who understood hierarchy but had grown up around animals that ignored titles. "Your Majesty, I can try." The gallery reacted at once. Hrothgar objected. Oswin whispered that the liability forms were not ready. Dr. Hargrove, waiting beside a trunk of bandages, said she preferred not to treat a farm girl folded in half by sacred wildlife. Captain Brennan said nothing. He watched Eliza's hands. They were not trembling. Rowan watched them too. His voice cut through the rising argument with quiet authority. "What experience do you have?" Eliza considered lying. A palace seemed like a place where people appreciated impressive words. Unfortunately, she had never been skilled at those when plain ones would do. "I have calmed a bull that broke through 3 fences after fermented pears. I trained a sheepdog that only obeyed rude commands. I convinced a rooster to stop attacking mourners during funerals. Mostly. And I got Widowheart's goat to stop biting the priest." Oswin's quill hovered. "Mostly? The goat still bites him on Tuesdays." Captain Brennan lost the battle with his cough. Hrothgar looked ready to declare the entire countryside unfit for civilization. Rowan studied Eliza. Her hazel eyes were steady and practical, as if she were looking at a locked gate and already thinking about the hinge. His wolf spoke inside him with great satisfaction. "Let her." Rowan's jaw tightened. "You do not make policy decisions based on hay and biscuits. She smells calm." So did Bellamy before the fountain. Bellamy smelled like flute oil and vanity. Rowan turned his attention back to the arena. The 3 moonwolves had arranged themselves in a loose triangle below. They were still watching Eliza, not snarling, not yet. "You may try," he said. Hrothgar turned sharply. "Your Majesty." Rowan did not look at him. "1 attempt. No armor. No chains unless she requests them. Captain Brennan, keep the gates secured unless I give the order." "If she is attacked?" Brennan asked. Rowan's gaze stayed on Eliza. "Then we intervene." Eliza gave a small nod. I would prefer no one blow a horn unless I am actively missing a limb. Oswin went pale. That was a joke, Eliza said. Was it? Oswin whispered. Eliza adjusted the small canvas bag over her shoulder and walked toward the arena stairs. The seventh beastmaster, still clinging to the banner pole, watched her pass beneath him. Do not go in there, he hissed. Eliza glanced up. Do you want your boot back? He looked at the smallest wolf, then at his remaining dignity. Not urgently. The gate opened. Eliza stepped into the training pit. The first thing she noticed was the smell. Not danger. Not exactly. The arena smelled of old fear, metal polish, wolf musk, stale meat, dust, and too many men pretending courage. Underneath was young energy, frustration, and boredom so intense it had become a public menace. Eliza had known dogs like that. Horses, too. A bored animal with power was a barn accident waiting for witnesses. She stopped 10 paces from the gate. The 3 wolves faced her. The largest one, Grim, though Eliza did not know his name yet, stood in the center with the solemn expression of someone responsible for the decline of standards in the realm. To his left stood Thistle, lean and bright-eyed, with the stolen boot pinned beneath both paws. To the right was Pip, the smallest. That meant very little, since he could still knock over a grown man by leaning with enthusiasm. His pale eye markings made him look innocent. Eliza distrusted him at once. In the gallery, someone whispered, "She is too close." Eliza lowered her bag to the ground. Grim growled. It was a very good growl. Deep, dramatic, polished by practice. Eliza looked at him. That is impressive. The growl faltered. Very chesty, she added. Good resonance. Thistle stopped chewing the boot. Pip took 1 step forward. Eliza crouched. Not low enough to submit, not upright enough to challenge. Just a person with knees. Then she took out a length of thick rope. 3 pairs of wolf eyes fixed on it. In the gallery, Elder Rothgar gripped the rail. What is she doing? Captain Brennan answered softly. Apparently bringing rope to a political crisis. Rowan said nothing. His wolf watched like a predator at the edge of a clearing. Eliza dragged the rope slowly over the sand. Thistle's ears snapped forward. Pip's tail moved once. Grim pretended not to care. He ruined the performance by leaning forward 2 inches. Eliza moved the rope again. Faster this time. A little dart to the left. A twitch to the right. Pip lunged. He was quick. Quicker than Eliza expected. And she had expected quick. His jaws closed not around the rope, but around her sleeve. The gallery exploded. Dr. Hargrove surged forward. Oswin made a sound like paper tearing. Rothgar shouted for the gates to open. Brennan's hand went to the signal horn. Eliza looked down at Pip's teeth clamped in her sleeve. He had not broken skin. He could have. Easily. Instead, his eyes were bright and fixed on hers, waiting to see what kind of creature she was. Eliza smiled. Then she tugged back. Not hard, not sharp. Just enough to tell him she understood the rules he had invented. Pip froze. Poor grip, Eliza said. Try again. For 1 suspended second, the arena forgot how to breathe. Then Pip's tail began to wag. He braced all 4 paws and pulled. Eliza gave him resistance without making it a battle. When he yanked harder, she stumbled forward with exaggerated outrage. Rude, she told him. Pip bounced. Thistle abandoned the boot and charged. Grim followed with the offended dignity of a wolf participating for administrative reasons. Within 30 seconds, Eliza was attached to 3 moon-blessed wolves. Pip had her sleeve. Thistle had the rope. Grim held the other end with such commitment that Eliza suspected he considered himself the anchor of civilization. She laughed. The sound moved through the arena differently than shouting had. It did not strike the wolves like a command. It invited them into something. Eliza used the rope's tension, letting them chase and win small victories, then sweeping it away when their excitement sharpened too close to aggression. In the gallery, the elders watched in stunned silence. She is not controlling them, Rothgar said. Rowan's eyes did not leave Eliza. No. Rothgar seized on that. Then you admit this is unsafe. I admit, Rowan said, that she is doing something more interesting than control. Below, Thistle leapt for the rope and missed. He landed in a roll, got up immediately, and looked personally betrayed by gravity. Eliza clucked her tongue. If you are going to be dramatic, at least commit. Thistle sneezed sand. Captain Brennan lowered the horn. I have served this fortress for 22 years, he muttered, and I have never seen a sacred royal beast look embarrassed. The training continued for 40 minutes. Eliza kept the wolves moving, rewarded patience with meat strips, stopped play when teeth got careless, and used no dominance, whistle, or chain. By the end, Grim had allowed her to brush 3 strokes along his shoulder with the old farm brush from her bag. He looked shocked by how much he enjoyed it. Thistle was lying upside down with the rope across his chest, paws in the air, trying to bite the knot without lifting his head. Pip had fallen asleep with his teeth gently holding the ruined edge of Eliza's sleeve. Eliza sat cross-legged in the arena, covered in dust, wolf fur, and the satisfaction of being right in public. Oswin, who had recovered enough to consult the temple records, supplied their formal names, Grim, Thistle, and Pip. Eliza decided the names suited them far too well. She looked up at the gallery. They are not cursed, she called. They are bored. No one answered. Then Thistle let out a loud snore. Captain Brennan said, very quietly, that might be the most useful military assessment we have received all month. Rowan found Eliza in the outer corridor after the arena had been cleared. The 7th Beastmaster had retrieved his boot, though he had been advised not to wear it in public again. Oswin rewrote the records with the haunted focus of a man who had watched bureaucracy fail to predict a farm girl with rope. Dr. Hargrove examined Eliza's arm 3 times and remained displeased that there was no injury worth treating. Eliza was brushing dust from her skirt when the Alpha King approached. She noticed him because the corridor seemed to notice him first. People stepped aside. Conversations folded shut. He stopped a respectful distance away. That, Eliza thought, was interesting. Most powerful people either crowded or ignored. Rowan did neither. He stopped where she did not have to step back. Miss Hartwell. Your Majesty. She gave the same practical dip as before. If this is about the sleeve, I knew the risk. His gaze dropped to the shredded fabric, where Pip's tooth marks made a tidy crescent. The sleeve is not my concern. Good. It was not my best one. Something shifted at the corner of his mouth. Inside Rowan, his wolf sat up. She is funny. Rowan kept his expression composed. You are not helping. I am observing. Rowan repeated her diagnosis, bored, not merely aggressive. Eliza corrected him on the second point. They were wolves, big ones and blessed ones, but aggression was not the same as malice. They had too much strength, too little trust, and nothing useful to do with their teeth. He was silent for a moment. The previous handlers believed discipline required restraint. The previous handlers wore armor that squeaked and smelled like fear. They entered with poles. One brought a flute. Rowan's eyes narrowed slightly. You disapprove of the flute. Your Majesty, I disapprove of any man who walks toward a frustrated predator and announces himself in B-flat. The wolf inside Rowan made a delighted sound. Rowan had to look at the wall for half a second. Eliza noticed. He returned his gaze to her with the full weight of kingship restored, or nearly restored. I would like you to remain at Shadow Rest as temporary keeper of the moon wolves. Eliza blinked at the word temporary. Rowan clarified that he meant until their condition stabilized. She pointed out that their condition was being treated like sacred furniture with teeth, so he adjusted the term to until that improved. This time, she did smile. Rowan noticed the smile with uncomfortable precision. It was not polished. It was not courtly. It was quick and warm and full of private amusement, as if the world was ridiculous but still worth managing. His wolf gave a satisfied thump inside him. Do not stare. Rowan did not stare. He observed. The position includes quarters, meals, full access to the training yard, and authority over their daily care, he said. Within reason. Eliza asked who decided reason. Rowan admitted that the palace had many people willing to define it, which sounded dreadful because it often was. Eliza adjusted the canvas strap on her shoulder. I will need rope. Real rope, not decorative rope. Meat scraps. A brushing schedule. Something they are allowed to destroy. And no one enters the arena with poles unless I ask. Rowan granted the supplies so quickly that Eliza stared. He reminded her that she had solved in 1 hour what 7 professionals had failed to solve in 2 weeks. She said she had only tired them out, and he called that a rare art. Eliza looked up at him, and for a moment the humor softened. They are not disasters, Your Majesty. Someone taught them that every person entering their space came to fight them. They learned to fight first. Rowan's face became still. Can that be unlearned? Most things can, if the person teaching has patience and is not holding a flute. There it was again, that almost smile. Eliza decided she liked it better than the kingly expression. The kingly expression looked heavy. The almost smile looked like a door briefly opening in a stone wall. Then stay, Rowan said. Teach them. It was phrased like a command by a man who ruled territories, but his eyes made it a request. Eliza had come for hazard pay. She had not expected a private corridor, a king with tired eyes, or 3 sacred wolves asleep in an arena because she had brought the right rope. All right, she said. I will stay. The next morning, the palace learned what it meant to employ Eliza Hartwell. The moon wolves ran at dawn before they had enough energy to become public policy. The arena gained rope bundles, stuffed sacks, brush boards, and 1 heavy wooden frame built for climbing and biting. Eliza learned their preferences quickly. Grim liked official praise, Thistle needed legal things to destroy, and Pip learned latches, kitchen schedules, and which guards carried snacks. He is not limping, Eliza told the kitchen staff. Pip lifted 1 paw and widened his eyes. I am looking, Eliza said. He is lying. Word spread quickly. The farm girl could manage the moonwolves. She spoke to them as if they were badly behaved geese and confiscated stolen gloves, dinner knives, and 1 portrait of Rowan's great-grandfather from Pip, who had no explanation and no remorse. Rowan heard every report. He began visiting the training yard. At first, he came with Captain Brennan and 3 guards. That was reasonable. The wolves were royal assets. By the second visit, he arrived alone with a leather folder. Inspection, he said. Eliza looked at the folder and asked what he was inspecting. Rowan said, rope quality. The folder contained 1 blank page, and his wolf sighed with the profound despair of a creature trapped inside a powerful idiot. Eliza handed him a rope bundle. Here, inspect. Rowan accepted it because retreat was no longer available. Grim watched like a supervisor. Thistle tried to steal the folder. Pip positioned himself behind Rowan's boots and shoved. The Alpha King nearly fell into a rope basket. Eliza caught his sleeve. The contact lasted 1 second, long enough for Rowan to notice her warm, calloused hand, and for Eliza to notice that he froze with surprise, not offense. She released him quickly. Pip, she said, we do not topple monarchs before lunch. Pip sat and looked noble. Rowan recovered his balance with what remained of his dignity and asked if Pip did that often. Eliza answered that Pip only did it when he believed people were standing too far apart. The silence after that was extremely clear. Rowan looked at Pip. Pip looked back with the innocence of a criminal in excellent legal standing. Inside Rowan, his wolf said, I like him. Rowan cleared his throat. I will leave you to your work. You did not finish inspecting the rope. The rope is loyal to the crown. Eliza laughed, quick and startled. Rowan carried the sound back to the palace like a secret. His later visits came with different excuses, meat strip budgets, wolf discipline, and whether brushing direction affected sacred dignity. Eliza answered with grave professionalism, and Rowan pretended these were normal questions for an Alpha King. On the 12th day, he found Eliza on an overturned bucket while Pip slept on her boot. Rowan said Pip trusted her. Eliza answered that Pip trusted Ham. Rowan stepped farther into the yard in a dark shirt with the sleeves rolled back, looking less like a carved portrait and more like a man who had forgotten to be untouchable for the afternoon. "You do not accept compliments easily," he said. Eliza kept brushing burrs from Thistle's tail. "I know what I am." "And what is that?" "A farm girl who got lucky with rope." Rowan's voice quieted. "No." Grim lifted his head. "Luck did not teach you timing. Luck did not teach you when to hold firm and when to give ground. Luck did not look at 3 dangerous creatures and understand boredom where trained men saw rebellion." Thistle sneezed into the brush. Eliza looked down at him. "Thank you for supporting the mood." Rowan wanted to tell her the fortress felt different since she arrived. Instead, he said, "The rope budget has increased." His wolf was silent for 3 full seconds. Then it said, "Wake me when you become less tragic." Eliza stared at Rowan, then laughed so hard Pip woke up and barked once in alarm. Rowan accepted the laughter with what dignity remained after discussing rope budgets as a romantic gesture. The council accepted none of it with dignity. Elder Hrothgar called a formal review after the 3rd week. He gave it a title so long that Oswin needed 2 lines to write it down. The meaning was simpler. He wanted Eliza removed before the court forgot she was supposed to be beneath them. The 3 moon wolves had been ordered to remain outside the council chamber. They interpreted outside broadly. Grim sat directly in front of the doors. Thistle chewed a sanctioned leather roll beside him. Pip had not been seen for 12 minutes, which meant the situation was already serious. Hrothgar spoke at length about tradition, royal dignity, and unsuitable rural influence. Eliza listened politely until he paused. "At a market meeting," she said, "someone would have brought biscuits." Brennan looked at the ceiling. Rowan looked at the table. His wolf sounded delighted. Eliza explained that the wolves were improving because they were being treated consistently. They ran every morning, chewed what they were allowed to chew, and were corrected before excitement became danger. Hrothgar accused her of treating sacred beasts like ordinary animals. "No," Eliza said. "I am treating them like animals. Sacred does not mean simple." The meeting might have dragged on for another hour if Pip had not emerged from beneath the council table with a folded parchment in his mouth. No one knew how he had entered. The doors were closed. The windows were narrow. The chimney had a grate. Oswin recognized the parchment and went pale. It was Hrothgar's draft proposal to restore restraint chains, isolation stalls, and food restriction. The room changed. Eliza's humor vanished. "You are not worried about safety. You are worried that 3 sacred animals made 7 experts look foolish and made a farm girl useful." Hrothgar's eyes went cold. "Careful." "I am careful," Eliza said. "That is why they are not biting anyone." Rowan stood. No one else moved. "There will be no food restriction," he said. "No isolation stalls. No restraint chains unless Eliza requests them for medical safety." Hrothgar turned to him. "Your Majesty, you cannot allow sentiment to override governance." "I am allowing results to override pride." Hrothgar bowed. "As you command." It did not sound like surrender. 3 days later, the palace prepared for the public demonstration. Every allied pack with an interest in Shadowrest authority had sent representatives. If the wolves could not be managed, Rowan's enemies would whisper that the Alpha King could not control his own sacred guardians. If Eliza failed, Hrothgar would have his chains, and Pip would probably have someone's hat. "No pressure," she said. Oswin looked up with hollow eyes. "There is immense pressure." Eliza identified the comment as farm sarcasm. Oswin did not enjoy farm sarcasm. The demonstration took place in the great outer arena, larger than the training pit and open to the spring sky. Representatives filled the tiers, guards lined every gate, and Dr. Hargrove glared at Eliza from beside a bandage station that smelled of vinegar, clean linen, and pessimism. Rowan stood in the royal viewing box. He wore black and silver. He looked every inch the Alpha King, severe and magnificent, his expression carved into perfect calm. Inside, his wolf paced. Something is wrong. Rowan already knew. He had learned to trust the tension in his own body. He had also learned to trust the way Eliza paused at the arena entrance, one hand on Grimm's shoulder, scenting the air like a farm girl who knew when hay had turned, water had fouled, or a goat was preparing a personal attack. Grimm shifted uneasily. Thistle's ears flattened. Pip sneezed. Then he sneezed again, offended by his own nose. Eliza looked down as Pip rubbed his muzzle against the sand with the wounded dignity of a lord served cold soup. Her eyes narrowed. "They are not rebelling," she said, not loudly, but her voice carried in the strange quiet before disaster. "They are sneezing with politics." Captain Brennan, positioned near the gate, closed his eyes. "That sentence is going into a report, and I hate that." The wolves entered the arena, and at first everything held. Then the wind shifted. Grimm snarled. Thistle spun toward the western gate. Pip bolted forward, sneezed, and skidded hard enough to tear lines in the sand. The crowd recoiled. Hrothgar leaned forward with satisfaction too quick to hide. Eliza saw the pale yellow dust gathered near the gate seam. Bitterroot stimulant. Her uncle had used pinches of it on winter-dull plow horses, and Eliza had hated the sharp yellow smell since childhood. It smelled like sour roots, old pepper, and bad decisions. Too much made an animal frantic with false alarm. The moon wolves were not failing. They were being provoked. "Brennan!" Eliza called. "Seal the western gate. Wet cloths. Now!" Hrothgar rose. "This is a disaster. Remove the girl." Rowan's voice cut across the arena. "Sit down." Hrothgar sat. Eliza dropped the rope between the wolves. Pip's eyes flicked to it through another sneeze, because even sabotage had not destroyed his commitment to bad choices. "I know," she told him. "Nose first, teeth second. Rude but fair." Nervous laughter moved through the nearest guards. Eliza dragged the rope once, not playfully but familiarly. Pip took one step. Thistle whined toward the gate until Eliza tossed dried venison near his paws. "Thistle, if you knock over that ambassador, he will write a poem about it, and none of us deserve that." Thistle snapped up the venison. Grimm remained rigid, trying so hard to hold himself together that Eliza knew he would be the one to break. His growl vibrated through the sand under her boots. It sounded less like rebellion than a kettle about to explode. She looked toward the royal box. "Your Majesty." Rowan was already moving. He entered the arena through a wave of gasps. Grimm's growl sharpened, but Rowan stopped the moment Eliza held out the old brush. "Do not dominate him," she said. For once, Rowan did not argue with his wolf, his training, or the ghosts of old law. He lowered himself to one knee in the sand and accepted the brush, becoming the first Alpha King in recorded history to kneel at a public summit for grooming purposes. Eliza kept her eyes on Grimm. Shoulder, slow. He likes being told he is dignified. Rowan brushed once, firm and steady. "Your stance demonstrates excellent command presence," he said. It was absurd. It was also exactly right. Grimm's growl broke into a rough exhale. Thistle sneezed so hard he sat down. Pip grabbed the rope and dragged it to Eliza's knee. The arena began to breathe again. Brennan's guards wiped the western gate. The dust clumped yellow against the wet cloths. Dr. Hargrove confirmed the stimulant with one sharp look. Pip snuffled along the gate seam, pawed at a loose stone, and pulled out a small tied packet. He carried it to Eliza's feet with great importance, as if he had personally invented evidence. Yellow dust spilled onto the sand. Eliza picked up the packet with the edge of a wet cloth and looked at Hrothgar. The bitter yellow dust clung to the fabric, sharp enough to sting her nose. Animals do not lie for politics. Rowan stood with the brush still in his hand. Grimm leaned against his leg. Thistle sat on the rope. Pip placed one paw on the yellow packet and looked ready to be thanked by history. Brennan reported that Hrothgar's office had requested special access to the western gate that morning. The plan was obvious. If the wolves panicked, Hrothgar could call it proof that Eliza's softness had failed and restore the old chains. Hrothgar protested. Pip sneezed again, then sat on the packet. Eliza looked at the elder. That is evidence, not a toy, though he does enjoy both. Oswin, pale but functioning, asked whether evidence was still admissible if a wolf had sat on it. Brennan replied that at Shadowrest they had survived worse chain of custody problems. Rowan stood beside Eliza in the sand, still holding the brush like a weapon no military academy had prepared him to use. This demonstration is over, he said, not because the Moonwolves failed, but because someone attempted to make them fail. His gaze swept the representatives. These wolves did not need chains. They needed understanding. They did not need hunger. They needed work. They needed someone brave enough to see what was actually wrong. Eliza went very still. By my authority, Rowan continued, Eliza Hartwell is appointed keeper of the Moonwolves. The old restraint methods are abolished. No chain, isolation stall, or food restriction will be used on these animals without her approval and medical cause. Hrothgar looked as if he had swallowed a stone. Rowan was not finished. I trust her, not as an experiment, not as a temporary measure. I trust her judgment, her courage, and the strange farm wisdom that apparently understands sacred wolves better than royal tradition does. Thistle chose that moment to drag the edge of Rowan's formal cloak under one paw and sit on it. The cloak pulled tight. Rowan did not move. For the first time in many years, representatives of 12 allied packs watched the Alpha King of Shadowrest fight a smile and lose by a fraction. The matter, Rowan said, with Thistle sitting firmly on his cloak, is settled. It was. Mostly. Hrothgar's assistant broke before sunset. Brennan brought him to the inquiry room smelling faintly of bitterroot, with yellow stains on his cuffs. Pip tried to follow, carrying the packet again, until Eliza explained that evidence did not need emotional support. The assistant stared at the wolf, then admitted he had placed the powder under orders to make the farm girl look dangerous and restore traditional methods. Hrothgar denied direct involvement until the search of his office produced signed drafts approving restraint chains, sealed instructions to his assistant, and letters claiming Rowan had been compromised by sentiment. Before dinner, Rowan removed him from the Wolf Oversight Council, stripped his vote, and confined him to the East Tower pending inquiry. Captain Brennan recommended banning ceremonial cloaks from all future animal-related proceedings. Oswin drafted the decree and left a blank space for whatever Pip would do next. Eliza returned to the training yard after the formal chaos ended. Grim slept beside the bite frame, Thistle lay tangled in a shredded sack, and Pip waited near the gate with Rowan's left glove in his mouth. Eliza told him no. Pip interpreted the word as an opening argument and ran. Rowan, watching the exchange, suggested that Pip was improving. Eliza said he was organizing, and neither of them enjoyed thinking too hard about toward what. The evening light lay gold across the yard. The fortress, so often all stone and command, felt softer here, less like a seat of power and more like a place where tired creatures could finally stop bracing for the next blow. Rowan came to stand beside her. For a while, neither spoke. Grim snored. Thistle rolled over and kicked one paw into the air. Pip tried to slide the glove into Eliza's bag. Eliza removed it without looking. Rowan watched her do it. You knew something was wrong before anyone else. Eliza admitted that Pip's sneeze had been her first clue. When Rowan looked at her as if no military academy had prepared him for that sentence, she explained that animals did not schedule sneezing for dramatic timing unless something caused it. I will remember that, Rowan said. Please do. It may save a treaty one day. He looked down at her. The almost smile was back, and this time he did not hide it. I meant what I said in the arena. Eliza's fingers tightened around the glove. About my strange farm wisdom? Among other things. The humor in her face softened into caution. Your Majesty. Rowan, he said. She looked away. He let the silence breathe. He had learned that much from her. Not every distance had to be conquered. Some had to be invited smaller. "Rowan," she said at last, and his name and her voice did something dangerous to the careful architecture of his self-control. His wolf, unhelpful as ever, whispered, "Better." Rowan ignored the warmth under his ribs. "I have spent most of my life believing strength was the ability to make the world obey," he said. "You walked into my arena and proved that obedience was the least interesting outcome." Eliza looked at the sleeping wolves and said, "He made it sound grand." "Farm work," she explained, "mostly taught a person to check the hinge before declaring the cow wicked." "And if the cow is wicked?" Rowan asked. "Then you stand farther from the gate." Rowan laughed. It was not loud. It was not polished. It was surprised out of him, low and warm, and once it escaped, the yard seemed to accept it as something overdue. Eliza stared. "You should do that more often," she said before she could stop herself. Rowan understood she meant laughing, which made the admission worse. He confessed that it was not considered essential to governance, and Eliza told him that explained a great deal about governance. His smile deepened. Pip, apparently sensing progress, shoved his head between them and dropped the stolen glove onto Eliza's boot. Eliza looked down. "If this is a proposal, it is poorly timed." Rowan went very still. His wolf made a sound like thunder discovering joy. Eliza realized what she had said. She clarified too quickly that she meant a proposal from the wolf, not from him. Rowan answered with perfect royal seriousness, which did nothing to make it clear. It was not clear. Nothing in Rowan's face suggested it was clear. For the first time since she had met him, the terrifying Alpha King looked struck by something soft and unsure whether to thank it. Eliza felt heat climb her neck. Thistle woke, yawned, and placed one paw on Rowan's cloak again. The moment broke just enough for both of them to breathe. Rowan accused Thistle of doing it deliberately, and Eliza agreed that the wolf liked when powerful people were forced to stand still. The weeks that followed changed Shadowrest in small, ridiculous ways. Grim judged guard drills, Thistle received a sanctioned destruction schedule, and Pip remained a criminal with supervised enrichment. Rowan stopped inventing inspections. He simply came to the yard, listened while Eliza worked, and let the wolves run themselves tired. That was the dangerous part. She could resist a king inspecting rope. It was harder to resist Rowan listening, as if every practical sentence mattered. One rainy evening, they sheltered in the Old West stable, with 3 wet moon wolves sleeping near the doors. Eliza admitted she missed the ordinary noise of the farm, but did not regret staying. "I belong with them," she said, "and with the work." Rowan accepted the boundary so well that it hurt. Eliza, who had faced 3 moon-blessed wolves with a rope, discovered that speaking honestly to one man was much worse. "I also belong here more when you are in the room." Something unguarded moved through him. Pip chose that moment to sit on Rowan's foot, apparently helping. Rowan still reached for Eliza's hand, slowly enough that she could refuse. She did not. No declaration followed. No kiss. For Eliza, that made it better. It felt less like being claimed and more like being trusted. The final challenge came at the Autumn Council gathering, but not in the form Eliza expected. Hrothgar was awaiting inquiry in the East Tower, where he had already filed 3 complaints about the view. His allies chose a cleaner argument. Eliza had made the Moonwolves too gentle. The proposal arrived at breakfast under the title Strategic Restoration of Royal Beast Projection. Brennan translated the whole thing into plain words. Several elders wanted the wolves displayed at the border summit with chains, muzzles, and enough snarling to frighten 2 rival packs into obedience. Eliza set down her cup and observed that they wanted peace negotiations to begin with 3 miserable animals pretending to be monsters. Rowan's face went still. Once, that plan would have sounded practical to him. The great hall filled before noon. Grim stood at Eliza's right, immaculate and grave. Thistle sat at her left with his rope knot, prepared to be emotionally devastated if anyone called it unprofessional. Pip sprawled across her boots as if the summit might secretly concern ownership of her ankles. Rowan sat on the dais because Eliza had asked him to. This time, the court did not need proof that she had earned her position. They needed to understand what she had changed. Lady Marrow, presiding with careful courtesy, asked whether Shadowrest could afford to present mercy as strength when rival alphas respected teeth. Eliza listened until the hall settled. Then she asked Oswin when the Moon Wolves had last fought in a war. The steward checked the old ledger and answered that it had been 112 years. Eliza nodded toward the representatives and asked how often the wolves appeared at ceremonies, patrol demonstrations, and diplomatic gatherings. Oswin looked personally injured by the usefulness of the answer. Often, he admitted. Then their first duty is not war, Eliza said. It is trust. In war, everyone expects teeth. In peace, a wolf must know when not to use them. Thistle's rope knot squeaked. Eliza gave him one look, and he froze with the sorrow of an artist denied his moment. That did more for her argument than half a speech could have done. A skeptical elder demanded proof under pressure. Eliza gave a small signal. Grimm returned Captain Brennan's leather gauntlet with royal delicacy. Thistle carried his beloved rope knot to Lady Marrow and released it into her lap like a tragic farewell. Then Brennan dropped a metal cup. It struck the stone with a sharp crack. Pip was on his feet before the echo faded, placing himself between Eliza and the sound. Grimm and Thistle moved with him, forming a controlled barrier around the woman who had taught them the difference between performance and threat. No one laughed then. Eliza stood inside that living wall. That is pressure. Not a chain. Not hunger. Not fear. Choice. Lady Marrow slowly set Thistle's rope knot on the table and withdrew her support for the border display. One by one, the other elders followed. Rowan rose only after the last objection ended. He descended from the dais and crossed the hall directly, stopping before Eliza with the wolves around them and the whole court watching. The council has seen your work, he said. So have I. But I will say publicly what should have been said sooner. Pip leaned against Eliza's leg. You are not here because I favor you. I favor you because you are here. Every day you make this fortress wiser, calmer, and considerably less dignified in ways it badly needed. Thistle sneezed. Rowan included him with one grave nod, and warm laughter moved through the hall. Then Rowan held out his hand. Not to pull Eliza behind him, to bring her beside him. Eliza Hartwell is keeper of the Moon Wolves by royal decree, by council recognition, and by demonstrated competence. She stands with my full trust. His eyes stayed on hers. And if she will allow it, she stands with my heart as well. Eliza took his hand and softly informed him that he could have mentioned that before the hearing. His mouth curved. He had apparently been advised not to lead with procurement. For once, she had no practical answer. Rowan leaned closer, his voice quiet enough for her first, and the hall second. I love you. Not because the wolves listen to you, because I do. Eliza's hand tightened around his. I love you too. Pip seized the hem of Rowan's coat and tugged. The hall erupted in laughter and applause. Rowan looked down at the smallest moonwolf with grave accusation, then conceded that Pip's timing might have improved the declaration. Eliza said that was the problem. Pip was often right. Rowan kissed her knuckles. Grimm rested his head against Eliza's hip. Thistle reclaimed his rope knot. Pip kept hold of Rowan's coat until the king surrendered and walked at his pace. Shadowrest never fully recovered its old dignity after that. It gained something better. The Moonwolves became fixtures of daily life. Grimm improved speeches by staring. Thistle's destruction schedule entered the royal calendar. Pip was banned from 3 rooms and 1 storage closet no one had used until he developed an interest. Rowan and Eliza did not rush into ceremony. He was slow not from doubt, but because once he stepped forward, he meant to stay. 1 month after the hearing, he asked if she would move into the West Wing rooms overlooking the training yard. Eliza asked if this was for convenience, wolf management, or rope inventory. Rowan admitted the first 2, then took her hand. Because I sleep better knowing you are near. Because the fortress feels less like stone when I hear you laughing in the yard. Because Pip has already moved half your belongings there and I am tired of pretending not to notice. Down the corridor, Pip's tail vanished with one of her stockings. Eliza observed that Pip had seemed busy. Rowan called it logistics. She called it theft. He maintained, with royal seriousness, that theft was a form of logistics. She moved into the West Wing before sunset. The rooms were too fine until her old brush sat on the mantel. Rowan replaced the velvet curtains Thistle tried to eat, and Pip hid stolen gloves under the bed like a dowry. On the first cold evening of winter, snow fell over Shadowrest. Eliza sat on the hearth rug in Rowan's private sitting room, brushing Grimm's shoulder. Thistle occupied the king's chair upside down. Pip lay between Eliza and Rowan, touching both of them. Rowan sat on the floor because Thistle had refused to move. Eliza reminded him that he was the Alpha King. Rowan admitted awareness of the fact and described the occupation of his chair as temporary. Thistle snored. Annexed, Eliza said. Rowan considered the stolen chair with grave strategy. Diplomacy may still be possible. Pip opened one eye, and Rowan added that, yes, he had negotiated with worse. Eliza laughed and set the brush aside. The firelight softened everything, Rowan's face, the enormous, ridiculous wolves, and the room once too grand for her, now cluttered with evidence of a life she had never planned. Are you happy? Rowan asked. Eliza looked around. Grimm had once frightened a council and now drooled on her rug. Thistle had turned a royal chair into occupied territory. Pip had stolen his way into everyone's routines. Rowan had knelt in sand with a brush because she told him trust mattered. She thought of the recruitment notice. Hazard pay included. Survival not guaranteed. It had been accurate in ways no clerk could have intended. Yes, she said. Are you? Rowan looked at Thistle in his chair, Pip on his boot, and Grimm leaning slowly into Eliza's lap. I have lost control of my sitting room. Eliza waited. He reached across Pip and took her hand. For the first time in years, yes. Pip's tail thumped once without him opening his eyes. Eliza leaned back against the hearth cushions. Rowan shifted closer, careful not to wake Pip. Outside, snow gathered on the fortress stones. Inside, the fire burned steady. Do you think, Rowan asked after a while, that I still require behavioral improvement training? Eliza diagnosed him as ready for the advanced course, listening, fewer rope inspections, and learning when not to look at her like he was trying to declare a treaty. Rowan called that high praise and kissed her fingers. Eliza warned him not to gloat. Thistle snored louder from the stolen chair. Grimm sighed as if the world had finally become acceptable. Pip, still half asleep, shifted until he was touching both of them. Eliza had come to Shadowrest because of a public notice and foolish confidence in rope. She had expected a dangerous job, decent pay, perhaps a story for the farm. Instead, she had found 3 moon-blessed disasters, a fortress needing laughter, and a king who had mistaken control for strength until she told him his sacred wolves were bored. It was not the life she would have imagined. It was better. It was noisy. It shed. It stole gloves and conquered furniture. It was home. Thank you for listening. If this story made you laugh, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss our next story. We'll see you in the next one.